Alright, guys and gals, this is your first video lecture. Today we're going to talk about graphing on the Cartesian coordinate plane. So let's go ahead and begin here. First of all, let's go over what the Cartesian coordinate plane is. Well, essentially, you're looking at it right now. Okay, it consists of the x-axis and the y-axis, if I can get it to right up there. X-axis is horizontal, y-axis is vertical. And what this does is it creates an intersection point right in the middle, which is called the origin. Okay, we'll talk about the origin here in a little bit. And as you can see, the Cartesian coordinate plane, or your XY graph, I'm sure you've called it that before, is broken up into 4 different sections, and you can it kind of helps you use it as a guide, excuse me, to where points are located. We're wanting to plot points on the coordinate plane. Okay, just basically locate. It's a locating or location on the XY axis. There's a Roman numeral there. That is called quadrant 1. Okay. I always tell students, hey, when you draw an XY axis, top right, that's your starting place. Quadrant 1. Okay, that's the main quadrant that people usually use when they're looking at data sets, making scatter plots, which we will be doing in the class. If you go over to the left, top left, okay, that's the second quadrant. I'm not going to write quadrant above here. You know, that's going to be quadrant 2. This kind of works counterclockwise about the origin. You know, you're going to start, let me get a different color going here. You're going to start at this quadrant and just go counterclockwise all the way around when you're naming these quadrants. So if we drop down from the second quadrant, moving counterclockwise here, we have quadrant 3. Okay. Well, we go to the last quadrant. It's obvious. We have 4 quadrants here. That's the 4th quadrant. Okay. Just giving you a basic idea, basic information, probably information you've seen before. It's okay. This is just a review video. Kind of get you in the swing of things at the beginning of the school year. All right. Let's talk about ordered pairs. Okay. Ordered pairs. I'm writing really neat here. If you really want to make fun of my handwriting, it's about the neat as I can get it. Let me try something. An ordered pair is built up of 2 things. We have an x coordinate and we have a y coordinate. Okay? All right. And in an ordered pair, the notation is pretty simple. Okay? It's just basically a point on the coordinate plane. You have your x coordinate first and then your y. Okay? X before y. It's just alphabetical. Okay? In an ordered pair, the x coordinate controls left or right movement from the origin. Okay, we're still looking at this origin here, the middle point. If it'll let me draw a point. My stylus ain't working right. So if you're looking at an ordered pair and your x coordinate is the first number that you see, which it should be, okay, you're going to start at the origin, and that x is going to tell you to go left or right, depending on the sign of the x. Okay, and we'll talk about that here in a second. The y coordinate, I got to write it out over here, controls up or down. Okay, up or down. Now, I'm going to write to the side here, just kind of give you a visual idea. Let's say x is positive. That means we're going to go right. Okay, if our x is negative, obviously we're going to go left of the origin. Okay, let's take a look at y here. I'm going to pick some different colors, that way you can keep track. If y is positive, you're going to go up. And if y is negative, you're going to move down, you're going to drop down. Now, I want to show you some things of what not to do, and I've seen a lot of students in the past do and make that common mistake. Let's just look at an ordered pair here. Okay, let's say we have -3, 2. Okay, -3, that's our x coordinate. Okay, we're going to start here at the origin, and I'm going to move -3 spaces to the left, 3 spaces to the left of the origin. So I just kind of get to that point there. I'm not going to plot a point yet. Okay, just because you see -3 don't mean you go -3 here and then I'm going to look at 2 and I'm going to plot 2 here. This is one location point. Okay, once I move left 3 spaces from the origin, now I can move up or down. All right, so from that position there on the x-axis, I'm going to go up or down. Well, since 2 is a positive integer, I'm going to go up 2 spaces and plot that point. Now, essentially, you'll have that right there. Okay. Now, if you recognize, since we talked about quadrants a couple slides ago, okay, well, what quadrant am I in? Well, obviously, I'm going to be in the second quadrant, since that's quadrant 2. Now, what I like to do is I like to tell my students is kind of draw a diagram. It's just a general kind of form to determine what quadrant you're in. So if your x is negative and your y is positive, where else could you go but the second quadrant? And same thing for the first quadrant. What would it take to be a point to be in this space, this first quadrant? Well, remember, I got this origin down here. Okay, let's say I want to plot 6, 1. Oops. Oh, geez. Okay, 6, 1. Well, the x coordinate, okay, controls left or right movement. I'm going to go to the right since it's positive. 6 spaces to the right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm writing here right now. That's not a point that I'm going to plot, but it's kind of a location for me. That way I can use my y coordinate to finish it up. Okay, you got to move two directions or make 2 decisions before you plot your point. Now, since y is positive 1, positive, I go up 1. Okay, there's my point, 6, 1. It's not pretty, but, it is what it is. All right. Now, what can we say about a point in the first quadrant? Well, my x is positive and my y is positive. Okay, same thing. I mean, and you can kind of go through and determine, let's say I give you a point right here. Let me change up the color a bit here. Let's use some green here. Let's say I got that point right there. If I want to name that point, I can start at the origin and decide, do I need to go left or right first? Well, I need to go left to get right above that point, because essentially I want to either go up or fall down right on top of that point there. Well, that point, that the x coordinate of that point is going to be negative 2. Now I just got to count how many spaces down I need to go to get to that point, which is also negative 2, which is in the third quadrant. Okay? And what can we say about a point in the third quadrant? Your x is negative, and your y is going to be negative. That might be a hint, a test question or a quiz question. I might tell you, identify the quadrant this point would lie in. I may not give you numbers. I may just give you these. And you have to tell me, you have to tell me what quadrant that point would lie in that had a negative in front of the x and a negative in front of the y. Okay. Obviously, fourth quadrant, guys. If I'm a point in the fourth quadrant, let's just plot something really crazy here. Let's say we plot, and I'm going to pick a different color too. I'll go pink for the ladies. So pretty. So pretty. So we got that point. It's close to the y-axis. Okay. Doesn't mean anything. It's in that fourth quadrant space. I'm trying to draw a y for y-axis. Here's my x. Okay, it's in that fourth quadrant space. Let's go ahead and name it. Okay, what we'd have is, let's go back to our origin and decide how far we need to go to be over top of that point. Well, that point, so I'm going left or right first. I need to go right. Well, how many spaces right before I can jump up or fall down onto this point here? I need to go one space to the right. If I go to the right, it's a positive x. If you put a negative sign here, you'd be over this way. And that's not where that point's located. Now we can count down. And since we're falling down onto that point, I know it's going to be a negative integer, or negative number, I should say. And I just count how many spaces down I went. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Or what are the odds? So we just named a point that existed in the fourth quadrant. Guys, this is general basic stuff that you got to master. Okay? I mean, there's going to be a lot of things we're going to be doing with some points here in the next 3 weeks, I would imagine. Probably even throughout the course. Because we're going to do some pretty gnarly things. And you got to have this down to survive. Okay? What can we say about the x and the y coordinate? Well, our x is positive and our y is negative. Well, any point that has an x coordinate that is positive and a y coordinate that is negative is in the fourth quadrant. Okay? Okay. It's easy. Let's look at one last little hoorah here. I'm going to label the X and Y axis. Here's my X, here's my Y. All my X's live in Texas. Alright, I don't have any X's. Let's say we have a point that is on, let's go here, and let's just stick to the x-axis for right now. I'm going to plot a point right here. Okay, if your points are on the axis, on any of the two axes, it's kind of easy to name. It really is. Let's name this point here point A. Let's say I give you a point B here. Okay. If we wanted to name point A, okay, let's think about this. Let's start at the origin. All right. I got to go left to get to this point. Well, there's my point right there. There's not much really going on. I already counted over to the left and got to my point. Now we just got to decide how far over to the left did we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I went 7 units away to the left of the origin. If I went to the left, it's negative. And what did I say? 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. So I went negative 7 units to the left, but I already got there. I don't need to go up. I don't need to fall down. What's my y coordinate going to be? Well, it's nothing really. What number represents nothing? 0. So if you have a point on the x-axis, and this is just a little bit of a hint, and this might be a test question. If your y coordinate is 0, okay, talking about this guy right here, okay, you had just found an x-intercept. I'll make that a T and just erase this. Haha, pretty slick, ain't I? All right. That's pretty easy to name. If it's on the x, it's an x-intercept. If you have an x-intercept, your y-coordinate is 0. This is on point B is on the x-intercept or x-axis. So I know it's an x-intercept. I'm going to go ahead and plug in that 0. Now, I got to figure out my x-coordinate. I know it's an x-intercept. Clearly, all I need to do is start at the origin and count over to that point B. Because I'm already going to land on it. 1, 2, 3. I went 3 units to the right. If I go to the right, okay, my x is positive. If I go left of the origin, my x is going to be negative. What happens, okay, what happens if I have something on the y-axis? Let's examine that and then call it a day. All right, so I'm going to use yellow. I think yellow you could see. Maybe not. Let me use a darker yellow. Okay, that don't look really yellow, but hey, whatever. Let's plot a point right here. I'm going to give you a really simple point. It's amazing how many people mess these up. Okay. Well, if they're on an x or y axis, they're not in a quadrant. It's not in this space. I'm going to use a highlighter here. It's not in this space. It's not in this space. It's between these two. Because what's the boundary of these two quadrants? You know, if I have quadrant 1 here, and I have quadrant 2 here, well, this one's in between. It's on the boundary line, this guy right here. Okay? If it's on the y-axis, what would we call that? Nothing major. It'd be a y-intercept. Okay? So let's name these points this time. It all works out the same way. Let me clear some mud here. Let me change this back to what it was. All right, so let's name these points here. If I have point C, I better use a different color here. If I want to name point C, okay, if I start at the origin, I don't need to move left or right because I can automatically fall down onto point C. Since I don't need to move left or right, if I have a y-intercept, guess what's automatically 0? X. Okay, same thing with point D. I don't need to move left or right to get there from the origin. Okay, so I can go ahead and make this 0. All right, now I can count down. I can fall down to find point C. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I don't know why I'm using 6 a lot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I fell down, so that's negative. That's a negative y. Okay, so make sure you get your signs correct because signs are a major part in plotting points. If you don't get that sign right here, okay, it's going to mess up your whole coordinate. And we're going to be using this a lot this year. All right, point D, I just need to go up one space. I didn't need to move left or right. Since I only need to go up one space, I'm just going to put a 1.